We found Larp in a hopeless place. If you're watching this video, then it means you want to know how to Larp. To anyone who hasn't dipped their toe in the hobby, Larp can be a scary, intimidating thing. With written rules, unwritten rules, spoken but unwritten rules, and unspoken rules that'll blow your mind if anyone says one of the syllables out loud. Well, try not to be alarmed, but there's more than one way to Larp at the same Larp. So get ready, because I'm going to show you how to do all the Larp. Every community you find can be made up of smaller sub-communities. Generally, you can divide them up into the ruling class, the peasant class, etc. But that would be elitist, and we're not about that at all because being elitist is bad, and I'm good, therefore I cannot be elitist unlike you. Bringing it back to sub-communities, most LARPers generally fall into one of two different categories. You have the role-players who really get into character and want to explore the world, tell a story, and generally just immerse themselves into the fantasy of LARP. Then you have the fighters who treat this more as a sport. They play to win and train to get better. If they're not tearing it up on the battlefield, they're not having fun. Now, despite how I phrase this, they aren't mutually exclusive clubs. You can join both if you want. Then you have the sub-communities found inside the fighters and role-players. You've got the socializers who turn up to mingle with their real and role-play friends. Then you have the show-offs who know HEMA and have real sword-fighting skills. Half the time they get their ass kicked as they deal real-life death blows that only deal 1 damage in-game, and the other half completely destroying all opposition without breaking a sweat. Then you have the other more literal show-offs who make their own stuff because they're into stitching, smithing, and cosplay. Which reminds me, a large portion of the community love to make their own stuff and sometimes come together before actual LARP events to discuss or make said stuff. Now that I think about it, since all that crafting takes place outside the game, what they're doing by definition is literal metagaming. Speaking of metagamers, there are those who ignore or at least place character motivations low on the totem pole of priority when they play. This is a game and they get it treated as such. Fight, loot, and level up. That's not to say that this is a bad way to view LARP, though this group does often butt heads with those who want to roleplay more. In my view, as long as they're not hurting anyone, I don't really care how they play the game. And that's what I like about LARP. Despite all these differing views, you'll often find LARPs made up of all different kinds of players that somehow make this all work. Besides them, you've also got the newbies, ready to be turned into any of the other categories of players above. You don't need to be good at anything to be a LARPer. As long as you're having fun that's not at the expense of others, then you're a swell LARPer in my book. Except for gatekeepers, screw those guys. Elitist snobs who consider anyone who doesn't play, dress, or roleplay to their standards as inferior. Now remember, you're not a real fan of mine unless you subscribe and hit that like button. So now you know about the different kinds of LARPers. You're welcome!